Just a second. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So what I'll try to do is, if this is fairly visible, I'll try to sort of, present in this mode is only because there shouldn't be any lag.
Yeah.
So what I'll try to do is, if this is fairly visible, I'll try to sort of, present in this mode is only because there shouldn't be any lag.
Yeah, sure, not an issue.
Okay, great. All right. So, welcome. Thank you, Raj, for this opportunity. I think we all have been sort of reading a lot of articles and trying to understand that, how with this and this whole new world, right, that we are talking, the new normal, how things will change, right? And we have already, as we speak, that we are witnessing a lot of changing behaviors amidst this crisis. And it is important that, we sort of, comprehend and understand. And this is just my point of view, a personal point of view in terms of, how we can sort of, um, break down various categories and how consumers will evolve or evolving rather, and sort of try to see and dissect the fact that how can we build brands around it, right? So yeah, I know it has been slightly tough for everyone, for all of us. We have been sort of, I think it is some 39 day of the lockdown, if I'm not wrong. And I believe that, the lockdown 3.0 has also kicked in with May 17th or 18th, where the lockdown will continue, right? First of all, I think it really salutes sort of, the patience that we have all have had. It's very difficult to stay in one corner of the room continuously working, and you're just sort of confined into four walls, right? I think a human is never, humans are always exploratories, but this time it has really taught us a lot of lessons that way. So it has been tough for everyone. I think the frontline workers, the healthcare professionals are battling it out. We should do our bit by staying indoors and try to minimize and flatten the curve. And I believe that, together we'll sort of see it through, right? So fairly put down, I think there are three things that we'll talk about, and largely in terms of, so the COVID crisis sort of changed the world into two aspects, right? There is this whole pre-COVID era where we had everyone predicting that how things are going to change, how the GDP is going to go up, how there is going to be the economy is going to be roaring. Yes, there has been a lot of in the last Feb and March. People, were trying to comprehend, trying to figure out, if the economy is in full swing, right? But India is one of the most developing countries, and I think the beauty of this country is the fact that the dependent population is going down, and you see a lot of major workforce, young workforce coming in play, right? To me, I think that itself is a great working capital, right? And these are all digitally native people, which means that the way you function or the way you interact with them has to be digital first, right? That is something that we have all believed in the pre-COVID era, and then the entire sort of COVID crisis sort of came in play, where suddenly things have sort of gone on a different tangent, right? We, I'll sort of tell you a very simple trend. When, so if you look at working spaces, right? There is this entire emergence of co-working space that sort of just came in, and WeWork was there, and a lot of brands started, being a part of this entire co-working culture. And they believe that, no, why do we need to sort of, have an office space? Why can't we just rent, co-working habitats? Cut to, this whole work from home has changed the entire narrative. Like that day, I was watching the interview of Mr. Munjal, who, of Hero Motocorp. So he spoke about how we don't need a, office commercial expansion. It is all about, how we find an alternative where people can come to work on an alternative days. It has been extremely tough for all of us to work from home. But I think over the period of last 30, 35 days, we have all proved the point with the fact that work from home is easy. It's not that it can't be done, but it can be managed, right? So to me, if you look at the other quadrant of the slide, which is the post-COVID, there are going to be a lot of these emerging behavior trends, right? And this is how a new economy will shape, the new normal will shape. While working is one aspect of it, there are many other factors that will come in play, right? But all said and done, right now these are all predictions, because the reality is that we all are living in a fluid world, right? Because so I'll tell you a very simple example. So I saw a very interesting picture on Economist where they published a picture of, when people in China, when the lockdown was lifted, everyone ushered to the Great Wall of China, right? And there was this lot of people who were there on the road. See, because I'll tell you, as humans, right? While we say we are very rational, many a times we end up making a lot of irrational decisions, right? So I think all of us might just say that, and there are many articles will talk about that how we'll practice social distancing, which is, by the way, extremely important, for a certain gestation period. But we all know for the fact that, we will, the moment this lockdown is cleared, everyone will sort of, in a way, rush towards to their favorite restaurant or the mall to sort of, get to feel that we are normal again, right? So, all said and done, it is going to be a lot of fluidity in terms of predictions. And to put a context to the entire presentation, I think we will have a lot of fluid world, right? And this fluid world is constantly going to evolve, and humans are going to constantly adapt to it, right? Now, I'll just run through a certain data points in terms of which has been put through from a research perspective, that how things are changing right now. If you look at clearly, if you look at the overall Google trends, the statistics of coronavirus are continuously rising from 29th Feb, right? And the associated keywords are sort of coming in play a lot. I'll cover a larger detailed point in terms of what are the Google predictions that have happened, and there are certain learnings there. But most used keywords where the users are all about, the lockdown, the pandemic, virus, and these are all India specific keywords, right? So there is a lot of fear, which we'll not deny, right? People are constantly tweeting or sort of, putting up their post or having a point of view, either supporting people or talking about through their lens what they are observing, right? So clearly there is a lot of conversation and buzz about, this whole pandemic that has sort of crippled the world, right? Um, Now these data inferences might go up, might go down because, obviously, but if you look at most of the conversations that are happening, there is a fair amount of balance, right? Which is very sort of skewed because if you look at Twitter, generally the sentiment of the negative share is always higher. But the 50% add-on comes in with the fact that people helping out each other, right? We have realized the importance of community living, helping our neighbors, and there is a lot of positivity that has started trying to kick in through brands, through you know um, various organization heads and everyone. If we looked at the Twitter conversations alone, there are close to so far 6 million plus Twitter conversations, which is quite massive, right? In the last 2 months, it is just going up, and I'm pretty sure numbers will go up even further, right? And one of the few things that we have noticed on Twitter is the fact that how key opinion leaders are sharing very important updates on the corona crisis, right? And the fact is that everyone is coming out, and a lot of influential personalities are appealing people to sort of stay calm and, follow preventive measures because uh, the thought leadership will matter now, right? Whatever you believe in, whatever things are happening, people are going crazy about, the popular TV shows, and Ramayan just had some 7.7 crore viewership, which is really high for a GEC channel, right? We all been as a generation, and most of the Gen Zs, right? I'm sure they might not even know Doordarshan. We might have seen it in our like the late millennials might have seen in the early days on Sundays that how Ramayana and Mahabharata was a ritual, right? So being nostalgic was sort of, and everybody was enjoying it. Everybody was having a conversation around it. A lot of conversations every day. You go on your any Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn profile. There is some other content around the corona, right? And there's a lot of content about either helping out or finding an opportunity and not be opportunistic. There is a thin line in finding an opportunity and being opportunistic. I think brands most of the time I try to be somewhere little opportunistic because the attention spans are decreasing, right? But today brands have also realized the importance of taking this opportunity and in their limited realm, whatever they can convey in some positive spirit. So I think that is where things are changing drastically. Yes, even on Facebook, we have seen the fact that how celebrities are appealing to a lot of public, and telling them about how to follow the guidelines, right? In fact, I remember a beautiful initiative by Facebook, right? So in the early days of COVID-19 crisis, if you put up any article, Facebook used to track it. And they used to track and see whether this article is fake or real, because we all know fake news is like scarier than any other news, right? So those little initiatives were really interesting to see that how, and immediately the switch happened. For the first time ever, you saw Apple and Google coming together to demarcate places which has the red zones of coronavirus. So suddenly, this one invisible virus has united the entire human race, right? And I think that's a big thing, right? Um, it's a very colloquial quote that we all have heard: "United we stand, divided we fall." Right? And I think the world is sort of united once again, and we're trying to being bravados by doing this. And there is a lot of conversation and chatter that is happening every now and then, right? Every day there is something or the other. We're seeing challenges that are happening. Suddenly someone who never knew how to sort of make vegetables, or and Swiggy always reach out to Swiggy or Zomato, is learning how to cook, right? I think that's the beauty of a human. Because primarily we're animals, right? So we tend to adapt things faster. Those things are quite interesting, and everybody has been sort of either taking a challenge or trying to do something. The number of content that gets created, right, largely the user generated content, has suddenly gone up, right? And we'll not deny that, because we all know that Instagram lives, which are like one-off brand associations, people are communicating with each other through Instagram lives. A very weird pattern that we have seen, that gym trainers, right, are using Zoom to do personal workouts, right? Now we always had this feeling कि अगर वो body बनाना है तो you have to go to the gym, right? And today it's not the case, right? You can still work out from home. Not that it sort of, I'll not say that it will transform you completely. It may or it may not, but you still can still be sort of slightly fit, right? So clearly we are seeing a lot of these trends that are happening. One thing that we have seen on YouTube is the fact that how news clips have taken like a lot of maximum hits, right? Because people are continuously trying to figure out what's next, what's next. It's the curiosity that is killing them, because everyone wants this lockdown to end at the earliest. And obviously, everybody is glued to the second screen, which is their smartphone, and everyone is trying their level bit to understand that what are the next steps that I can plan, right? And luckily, I think with this third extension of lockdown, there are certain leeways that have come in play, and that should bring certain respite, right? So these are certain topics that we have seen that are happening. Messages to wear masks. I think one big change that we might see as a behavior is the fact that wearing mask will become extremely important. But I see a lot of brands in capitalizing this opportunity, in sort of creating it in a lot more stylish, and also having the medical guidelines in place. But I have already seen Louis Philippe doing some interesting stylish masks that you can purchase it online, right? So that will be a great opportunity. Like I remember how when smartphones literally took over the GSM phones, every lane in India had a smartphone cover that you could buy, right? So masks will sort of get democratized completely. Um, there are a lot of these things that are happening, that the whole work from home, like the workout from home and cooking and everything, people will start learning a lot, and sort of YouTube and other whatever video mediums will come in play. So that's a trend that we have seen. Also, I think one big thing that are happening is the fact that we never thought that doctors, right, आपको अगर ठीक होना है तो you have to go to the OPD or the clinic, right? But if you look at how the entire healthcare wave has happened, a lot of people are taking consultation at the base level consultation from the doctors through an app, or probably reaching out to their family physicians through the WhatsApp video calls, right? So these are quite interesting trends, and problems are still being solved, right? At an initial or a nascent level. In fact, one big shift that we might see is the fact when things are slightly in a lot more better condition. We see the fact that this whole boom of delivery business, right, is going to go up. And I'll tell you why. And I've been talking to a lot of clients and other, industry leaders. The thing is that, see, somewhere as much as we would want to venture out again and go back to the normal, like the way we were living, the fear of, going to a public event or a public place will be a lot more scarier, right? And there are a lot of people who have understood the importance of ghar ka khana, right? So eating out or ordering will not become an everyday affair, but it might become an indulgence. That's a big shift that we might see, right? So that is one behavior that we have observed, because earlier kya hota tha ki you are running late from your work, you just quickly order something on Swiggy, and probably it became like your go-to kitchen. But today, I mean, later this may not be the trend, right? Uh, in fact, there are a lot of these brands who are trying to figure out the fact that, can we do something which is like where we help people and give all the essentials to cook, and they cook it on their own. So there is a little satisfaction that comes in play that I have done it on my bit, right? So I sort of run through these points because because these are the things that we are all aware of. Yes, I've spoken about how brands are finding interest ways to engage the audience, and we have all seen some interesting, quirky, intelligent creators that are coming in play, right? And the importance of hand washing, or or talking about how your everyday life is in the midst of the corona crisis. There are many various ways the content is being used, right? So, but coming to the whole point, the fact, right? How will the behavior change, right? Now, see, these are certain predictions based on the current scenarios. It might skew to a different tangent also, or probably it might sort of, have this, uh, the patterns that we have observed. And the reason being the fact that I spoke about how, we humans are irrational. We say we take logical and rational decisions, but our irrationality sort of kicks in earlier than the rationality, right? So that's that's the beauty of being a human being. So this is the latest report by Google searches, right? And in terms of what are the things that people have are searching continuously, right? Because that gives you first hand information that what are people trying to understand and comprehend. Now, it's quite interesting with the kind of data patterns that we are seeing, right? So we used to use this word called as always on communication or always on strategy. Probably that time is has moved from, I mean, the real has moved from brand to consumers now, because they are just always on their smartphone or internet devices, right? I mean, a simple example: we all are glued to our laptops while we are working, and there's this smartphone which sort of comes up as an entertainment, right? So if you look at the search patterns, um, has been a 300% increase in ration dukan searches. Now this is quite interesting, right? Essentially, we all have an essential store, which probably either we order it through a phone, or probably we must have visited once in a while, right? But today suddenly people have realized the importance of having a retail kirana outlet. There has been a great jump in grocery delivery near me. So if you look at the pattern, people would want to order groceries a lot more eventually, right? Either through online, in terms of where there is a proper hygiene practice done, but they have realized the fact that because it's better to cook meal on your own way, it's important that we order these products, right? People have looked for doctors near me. The best part, right? YouTube is always considered to be not a very leisure-led content, but more like on-the-go content, right? We tend to watch a lot of 20 minutes, 30-minute videos or 10-minute videos. Suddenly people wanted to stream free movies on YouTube. Now, there's a very interesting pattern, like, people who couldn't sort of, didn't have an OTT access, like a premium access, people are looking for that, right? If you look at most of the search that is happening across India, is the fact that people who didn't have an who are paralyzed, and I can understand that if I could rent a laptop, right? Because I have literally I had my own crisis. So there are a lot of these interesting trends, which is not just about a ration dukan, but we were looking for collaborative softwares, which is Slack or probably team management, Asana, all these things, right? In fact, if we look at the entire video streaming platforms, we all know that it has seen a phenomenal rise, right? and people have suddenly moving away from their conventional streams to just consuming content continuously. Right. In fact, a lot of OTT platforms have also seen a lot of surge in their subscription. So now the point here to observe is the fact that will there be a balance between a cable and an OTT platform? That could be a very interesting thing, right? Because largely the Gen Zs and the millennials are very digitally native and OTT driven. And the cable subscriptions, because there's a huge dependent population, still exists. But when I'm talking to a lot of people who are in their 25 and 30s, they feel they absolutely don't need a cable. And I'll tell you why, because OTTs are merging with them, and you can literally cast your screen on your smart TV. So why do you need a cable connection, right? Which means a lot of DTH companies will have to evolve. One big thing, right, which probably we're just discussing the fact that, how learning has become extremely important. So learn online, people taking up, making the most of their, 3 precious hours, I'm pretty sure most of us end up commuting at least minimum an hour or 1.5 hours to reach offices, right? So we are making use of this 2-3 hours in the whole thing. There's also a very interesting pattern that, there's some herb called giloy, which has some medicinal property that has seen some like phenomenal rise, which sort of really accelerates the whole point that we have been talking about as brand leaders, that the how India is on the crux of video, voice, and vernacular rise, right? And I have observed the fact that my mother actually does a lot of voice-based searches because it is far more convenient, right? One of the biggest things that are going to change, right, which is essentially in the finance and the fintech industry. So if you look at suddenly there has been a big jump in the whole UPI, right, because contactless payments will become very extremely important. People will be scared to exchange cash, right? Everyone is trying to figure out how can I do UPI or pay bills online. As simple as if you can see that there's been an increase in Bijli bill check. People tend to use a lot of Hindi words in this country, right? And overnight mutual funds, because people are concerned about how their mutual funds are investing. Honestly, I haven't even gone and seen my mutual funds. I don't know what miserable condition it is in. So, and I don't want to see it till the time it sort of appreciates to a certain extent. But the reality is exactly what sort of this slides, summarizes. It is all about optimizing, personalizing, and humanizing, right? That is probably extremely important because see, one of the beauty of digital strategies is the fact that at any given point of time you can optimize your strategies, right? Most of the strategies we all know while we make consumer cohorts, it is always important to sort of add a dash of personalization, and probably why, because that medium sort of helps you. Like I'll tell you, I think Mailchimp had released data way back. The fact that when you have a database and you send personalized mailers, the CTRs of the mailers are far higher than when you say hey, because suddenly there is something that I feel the message is personalized to me. More importantly, I think what is extremely important is the fact that brands don't behave brands, but brands behave a lot more like humans. And we have seen some stellar examples that we have, like ITC partnered with Zomato, if I'm not wrong, to deliver essentials, right? Oh, sorry, to with Domino's to deliver essentials, right? So these are quite interesting things that we've seen, that brands have suddenly realized, okay, we have our core businesses, but now is not the time. It's all about building trust with the consumers. Because see, at the end, we are all humans. We will always remember that good thing that someone did to us, and we'll always have this little vengeance for that bad thing. Not that everyone will have a vengeance, but this whole when you remember, have some good memories with the brand, that is when you will make your second transaction once again, right? All said and done, there is enough data, there is enough information, but the reality is that there is a very different situation घर पे, right? We all know for the fact that it has impacted everyone's life and the routine has become sort of haywire. I know there are a lot of people who are constantly talking about how the work is sort of just never finished, right? People are just clocking the number of hours, and it's also because there's not a fair amount of balance that we are able to strike. Somehow, with this little 30 days that have happened, we are trying to get disciplined. But we all know that, how there has been no separation between home time and work time, right? I know a lot of young millennials who have gotten married and stay in urban cities like Bombay. They spoke about how they try to wrap up all their work before 9:30 or 10, because once you are in front of your laptop, it actually becomes very difficult. Beyond that, people who have families, right? Because earlier what used to happen was the kids used to go to school. It has to used to get your little time where where the mothers or the homemakers, sort of, could spend some time in understanding what they need, sort of explore some content. But today there is absolutely no, and you have to, and I have a great lot of respect for homemakers and mothers who are trying to continuously sort of, balance families, work, their work, looking after kids. I think it takes a lot of resilience to do that, right? So it is chaotic at every home. I think also very important that has happened is the fact that children are not able to go out, right? It is a completely different routine for them. So it's very important that involve with them for some sort of physical fun activity where you can work out together with the kids. I think that could be a very great thing. But squarely put down, I think this is a very important conversation that a slide that sort of I wanted to talk about. See, what happens is in behaviors, right? There are these new behaviors that lead to gateway behaviors, right? These gateway behaviors sort of become like a lot of permanent behaviors. Like I'll tell you a very simple example, right? Um, like for instance, everyone has a hand wash today. Most of the places has a hand wash. If you look at the earlier, आप कहीं पे भी बाहर जाओगे, you always had this little soap which used to be there right next to the wash basin. I remember in our school days, we used to have this little Lifebuoy soap, but that got replaced with, hand washes. So that new behavior created a new gateway behavior, right? Now, hand washes, while they will be there, but hand sanitizers will become extremely important. So everyone, like the way every backpack has a water bottle, I think there will also be one more pouch which will sort of hold hand sanitizer, right? So suddenly, if you see, there is a continuous transition that is going to happen, and we all are going to carry, hand sanitizers because we just don't want to touch anything, right? So what happens is to form any behavior, we all know a very colloquial, that it takes 21 days to form a habit, right? But there's been more than 40 days now, and the habit has transformed into behaviors. So by the time when we are back in a regular mundane life, there are certain behaviors that we can't let go of, right? One of the biggest things that not everyone is predicting is that will people start hugging each other or handshaking each other? Probably that might get replaced with the conventional, the Indian tradition form of namaste, or there will be a certain distance, not because people are scared, but it's just about drawing boundaries, right? Because we have all now got used to having this little social distancing, 6 feet apart, staying away from each other, so those things are going to get carried forward, right? But in the midst of all of these challenges that we are facing and we are trying to adapt to the new thing, I think there is a fair amount of positivity that has come in play, right? So, there is always, the world was all about me time, right? And we used to use this, many brands used to talk about the hashtags. In fact, travel as an industry evolved around me time, right? People used to feel that taking breaks to read, to discover, to explore, that is when I have my me time, because every day it is just chaotic, right? So the me time has changed the needle to a lot more me time because you are with your families, you are trying to figure out what is happening. I think one big change that is happening and it will continue is the fact that how being well informed will be the new norm, right? Uh, and we can clearly see through the number of search queries that have gone up is the fact that consumers will always either search for that medicine or will try to be well informed in the whole process, right? So that is something that will be carried forward. Um, there is going to be a lot of consciousness. And I think this will be a big thing, is because I was talking to a friend yesterday and he said a very interesting thing, right? I'm going to cut down on a lot of my, lifestyle and fashion expenses. So he said that, how I used to end up doing a lot of impulse buying, But suddenly I've realized that you can live your everyday or your life with sort of, like 3 or 4 t-shirts or a shirt. You don't necessarily have to end up spending so much amount of money. So a lot of non-essential item purchases might see a dip, right? Um, so consumers are going to be a lot more conscious, which means um, they are going to be heavily price driven. That is going to be extremely important. Um, exactly what I was talking about, right? So lifestyle-led purchases will see a potential dip is something that's a hypothesis that I have, for the fact that how slowly people will try to see that, is it, at times you ask this question, is it really required, or let me just buy and keep it, I'll figure out, right? I think people will start questioning this quite often, is the fact that is it really required? Yes, as which I call it, this as the 3H, the health, hygiene, and high standards, that will sort of become mandatory, right? You would only want to go out to a place where there is an absolute hygiene standard, right? People are not going to compromise on the health. The very fact that, how, if you look at, the biggest thing is the fact that, I mean, all said and done, they've in the whole COVID-19 crisis, immunity became extremely important, right? So people are going to eat a lot more healthier. People are going to have the involvement with, I don't know how much junk involvement will happen, but they will try to balance it out, right? And if one of the biggest things that I see is the fact that when it comes to your local eateries, right? If the good hygiene and high standard practices are not being followed, it might just push you back, right? So these 3 H's that I call is going to be extremely important in the whole process. There are certain industry specific behavioral shifts that we have seen, right? Like for instance, travel will see some really new emerging trends. Now, there has been a lot of speculation about the fact that how airlines might just operate in a 50% capacity, the middle row seat might be empty. How will people travel? Clearly, the if we look at it, people might be sort of scared to travel globally, at least for the next 1 year. And while euro is like the heart of travel, everybody wants to travel euro, but people might be slightly concerned about at this point in terms of traveling globally, right? But one big definitive pattern that we will see, which people will look at, is the fact that how business travel will decrease significantly, right? Because there has been a lot of every organization, with all due respect, and is being very judicious about the cost that is going on, right? So if it is absolutely necessary, that is when the business travel will happen, but that is going to decrease significantly. So if you see, if business travel sort of goes down, which means for the fact that the business luggage demand will also go for a down, right? That is one trend that you can observe. Also, because people have figured out the fact that how it is not necessary to travel every now and then. Like I am a frequent flyer, right? And I suddenly realized, okay, I can still connect to my clients in some other city without absolutely no stress, and business can be conducted as usual. So that I see a big shift that is happening. um, I think one big thing, right, that is going to happen is the fact that how technology innovations and new communications will be introduced. All this while, the technologies was more like a catalyst, but technology will become like the backbone of everything. And a lot of people are speculating for the fact that digital transformation will be a lot more faster, right? And suddenly people have realized the importance of digitizing. If they are not there out there in the digital universe, or they're not creating an ecosystem there, it is going to be very, very difficult for them to be discoverable, right? We all know for the fact that how video conferences, which used to be seldomly used in offices, unless it's like you're connecting two geographies. It was always the habit of going out and meeting clients, right? Because as the whole, in India, business is all about meeting them in person, establishing the relationship. But video conferences will sort of, will always sort of become a lot more adaptive. One trend that I was observing, the fact that how AR and VR, right, the whole mixed realities. We always thought it is going to be a nice experiential way, but I think they will be adopted a lot more faster. Like I'll tell you something that so when MG decided to launch ZSEV way back, they used Facebook augmented reality application. So you could literally place a MG ZSEV on a table and sort of decode the entire color specifications. And a lot of automotive brands are going to explore mixed realities, right? Because and most of them are talking about contactless experiences. We all know for the fact that how. So earlier, when social media came in, it was more about being there. There is this whole thing of social validation, but today my social profile will be sort of more like my Aadhaar profile, right? So suddenly a lot of people are going to actively use social media. The biggest example that we can see with the whole geomart deal that happened with Facebook, that most of the conversation, like you can just order a grocery through WhatsApp, right? You don't have to travel the website and app and everything. It's as simple as just going and telling them. In fact, I was very astonished that and which is something that I discovered on my mother's phone, is the fact that we have our so mothers are, I think they are the hands down the CEOs of every home, right? They know how to sort of get their things moving. So all the groceries wala numbers and everything she had. So she just calls up and asks him if this is available, that is not available. He'll send the list. So every week we get a list of the groceries that might come in next week. And then you can place a prior order. And this is happening completely through WhatsApp, right? So, and if you want free home delivery, you charge some little premium and he'll also deliver you at home. So I think these are a lot of interesting things, right? How it is not just about using social media, but sort of making it like your everyday essential, right? And like, be it Facebook or be it Instagram, it is you're actively started putting it to use more than sort of consuming content, right? We will also see a lot of new emergence of social apps. Like I remember House Party app sort of went, the download sort of went really up, right? And people were just curious about this whole House Party. Now you look at this behavior shift, right? So there is Instagram, there's LinkedIn, there's Facebook, there's Twitter, and we spend a lot of time on Instagram as a generation. Um, but suddenly we sort of, not that we dissed it completely, but we wanted to explore newer social apps where we can sort of play games with our partners or with our friends, right? So if there is something innovative, disruptive, now is the time to launch some interesting social apps, right? We all know that the food consumption habits will change. So I feel for the fact that I'll tell you where the whole food consumption habits will change. Yes, being healthy is not like being unhealthy is not an option. You've got to be healthy. But the whole point is that the vertical farming business, right, might grow up. People would want to grow their own vegetables in their balconies or backyards, where it is suddenly there is not like I have to be dependent on it. And in fact, I've seen a lot of content where people are sort of trying to see if I can not have this conventional show plant that they say that which is just adds greenery and adds little oxygen in the environment. But also, can I use that same place to sort of have to grow some tomatoes or some chilies? Because I think that will be a very interesting thing, and people will definitely prefer a lot more organic food, something where it doesn't involve pesticide. So I think that trend, no, where organic was very niche, it might become the new normal, right? Um, Exactly. So what is talking about how simple and healthy eating. So, while we have all, I'm pretty sure that, we all have learned some new culinary skills. Like, I always thought I'll have to go to a baking class to learn baking, but I challenged myself and I baked some dinner rolls, which my mother was quite happy about because she was wondering, I never thought that you could cook so well, right? But the reality is that because of these things, we will start, you know, um, getting inclined towards simple and healthy eating, right? Um, More importantly, personal care, hygiene, and quality products will play a very crucial role. So what used to happen was that we most of people who are very particular about the kind of shampoo that they use, the kind of hair oil that they use. Suddenly, we'll see a lot of trends where these products will sort of be seen a lot more, right? Because people would want to maintain a lot of hygiene standards in their everyday basis, right? So that industry I feel is going to definitely go up. We have anyway seen a lot of like men's grooming as a category is becoming a lot more emerging, right? We've seen that pattern in the last 1-2 years, where the beard oil company and all these companies have sort of emerged. But I think personal care as a category will see a phenomenal rise. I was looking at my what happens is that we all end up stocking say Lysol and Phenyl and all these brands, right? The volume of purchase will grow up, because वो जो घर पे flooring होता है, if it is to happen at once, it might just happen twice now, right? So those tiny elements will add to it, right? Also, because there is a great awareness about this high quality living, the spends on premium personal care products will definitely go up. Because you have this typical big volume shampoos which are often at a discounted price, and people will suddenly see, okay, while it is great, but does it have some good standards that I can go about? So there will be a natural transition in terms of adopting these products, and people will not compromise in the sorry. So yes, as I rightly spoke, that how sanitizer will become a part of essential every household. So this is what my theory is. So before the billing cart, right, that you see in Big Bazaar and everyone, they always keep these tiny chocolates or mints and everything just before the billing counter, which adds to your impulse purchase, right? Suddenly you might see those tiny bottles of sanitizer. In fact, in the last 1 month, if you have seen the number of brands that have come up with hand sanitizers, right? I mean, Dabur also launched its hand sanitizer range. Suddenly, this will become like, you can just go to any store now, even like, the local, the cigarette shop or something, where you will be able to buy the 10 rupee hand sanitizer. It will become that democratized. I think that is a big trend that we'll see. Um, yes, we have spoken about how there is a lot of conscious decision making, which also means for the fact that how people, earlier working out used to be like, oh yeah, I have just a very chaotic schedule, I can't. I think people will start finding a little 15-20 minute window to start working out, or probably try to do their bit in being healthy, right? So that consciousness of staying fit, backed by the lot of fear that we have gone through, is going to continue. Um, so and not just physical health, right? One of the biggest thing, and I think right now we are at the cusp of it. See, for a good 30-35 days, most like 39 days precisely, this whole staying at home has become mentally taxing for us. So if you see the nature of communication of brands, right, things have started changing. So earlier it was all about stay at home, social distancing, this, that. Suddenly, in the last 1 week, if you see, brands have started spreading a lot of positive messages. Like Coke released a very interesting film about, about the frontline workers and spreading optimism and positivity, right? Brands have changed their communication, trying to make it a lot more playful and using their mediums, and in terms of how can induce a little optimism, and where I can spread the message of just hang in there, it's just few more days and we'll sort of wade through this. So mental health will also become extremely important. We have managed to drive through this because we were just like we had family members, we have everyone together who are just supporting each other, right? And I think to me that has sort of changed the entire narrative, right? This whole nuclear families as a concept, which became like a big trend, I think people would want to stay with a lot more joint families, because suddenly it's realized that the importance of having your loved ones near to you, right? I have a colleague, I can't name that person, but that individual is staying alone here for the last 40 days, and I know for the fact that how he's going through a lot of crisis, because he has to manage everything, to work, to getting his essentials, to cooking food. It's very difficult. So that mental health and these things will sort of see a lot of change. Also, entertainment, right? This is going to be like where a major trend. While we have seen this, but new options will be starting getting explored. Which also means brands will have to tune a lot more things. Like generally the DTH, right, the Tata Skies and all these brands might have to look at how they can market themselves a lot more as a OTT platform, right? and people would want to sort of explore newer options. आप कितने दिन OTT पे देखोगे? तो suddenly virtual reality will be a lot more adapted faster. People would want to explore a lot more VR, which was VR was very niche. Very few people would have those VR glasses, and where they. But I think that will become like that, a lot more real 6-7 months down the line, where you can still have a virtual reality there and you can sort of explore it. Yes, one big surge that most of the, while PUBG came in and disrupted the entire, Indian young Indian audience. So a lot of people are going to explore, we all know how playing Ludo is like mandatory in the night, right? So अगर आपने Ludo King या Ludo Queen आप नहीं बने तो it's the day doesn't end. So a lot of group gaming apps and simple gaming. So gaming industry will see a lot of rise in the whole process, right? Um, exactly what I was talking about, how Ludo and card games will become online. And I think somewhere people are also getting nostalgic and they're looking at newer versions of that. And while these are things happening, I think I've fairly touched upon these points in the past, that how when you go out, the restaurants' expectations will really increase. And I think that's a big learning, because the restaurant industry might not see, like, earlier, expansion strategy played a very important role. But I think what will become extremely important for most of the restaurants is the fact that how I can practice high quality hygiene delivery standards and still sort of retain my brand, so that it doesn't really hemorrhage my equity, right? So if you look at, if you open your Zomato and Swiggy app, I think those brands, for me, these brands are a brilliant example of how they adopt, these behaviors very fast. So in Swiggy and Zomato, you have hygiene ratings now, right? So earlier it was the food ratings that used to come in play, where people used to see what are the food ratings that are important. Now hygiene ratings will become extremely important, right? Um, user reviews are extremely important in terms of selecting a new restaurant, but people will see what is the hygiene rating first, and then we'll say, okay, what is the great food about here, right? So exactly what I was talking about, that how no contact delivery, how the cooking, what is the cooking safety practices. One big trend now, I am going to spend some time over here, is the fact that see, if you look at the millennial generation, right? For good 2-3 years, there's a lot of, like, renting was the new asset, right? People, you could rent a smartphone, and suddenly there was this whole thing about, Arey, why do I need a spend money in home buying and have this big loan on my head? I'll just rent it out. I don't know if I'm going to stay in Bombay. I might move to Delhi or Bangalore. But now I think there will be a lot of matured financial planning, which at least our parents used to do. That they used to save a lot. They used to ensure the fact पहले घर खरीद लो, उसके बाद जो करना है कर लो, right? So there are 2-3 things that there are certain predictions that I have. I think the demand for low cost housing incomes, low cost housing or 1 BHK apartments or studio apartments will see a huge rise, right? Commercial in real estate will go down, because many brands are contemplating, do we really need that scale of commercial, right? Millennial as a generation, if you look at them, they have got suddenly scared, right? Also because a lot of people, unfortunately, it's so sad that they have lost their jobs, right? So if there is no, I mean, Maslow was right? All we need is food, clothing, and shelter. Food, I'm not worried because we are an agrarian economy and that will never be a problem. Clothing, we have all realized that we can do away with 3 t-shirts in the wardrobe. We don't need these expensive, clothing lines. But shelter is something that if you don't have a job, how will you pay the rent, right? So I think that is something that there will be a lot more mature financial planning, like from buying home to creating assets. The liabilities will go down, which my whole hypothesis is that people will, all these unnecessary credit swipes that used to happen, and we used to see something in Amazon, we used to quickly go and buy it without really understanding the nature of it. Those liability spends will definitely go down. One big surge that might happen is the fact that in automobile, right, because public transport, um, probably there will be a fear of where a lot more human contact might come in play. I see that a big trend where hatchbacks will come back, right? Because India moved to an SUV market and everybody was trying to create SUV front lines in everywhere, say, smaller SUV, a bigger SUV, a seven-seater SUV, suddenly hatchbacks will become extremely important. Um, Electronic vehicles will also see a big difference because people have realized the importance of how not adding pollution is also adds to your well-being. We have all seen pictures about how from Rishikesh you could see the Himalayan range, how in the in Venice the entire thing has cleaned. There were videos about how Yamuna river has cleaned itself, right? So those patterns are going to be a lot more important. So for me, car is not going to be a liability, but car is going to be a health investment in a way. So people may not buy SUVs or sedans, but they might buy tiny hatchbacks. So I think that's a big trend that we might see. One big thing that might also happen is because of these entire, and imagine one invisible virus has shaken the entire world economy to an extent where the oil barrel price has gone below negative. So the whole point is that people also look at these a lot of patterns that will change. So asset creation will become extremely important. People will foray into a lot of fixed deposits and all those things. Um, um, I mean, from a work from home culture that many organizations have been contemplating and thinking about it, that how it is going to be a viable and a long term option, right? If all the technology and regulatory issues can be addressed. In fact, many organizations that there have been articles also, and where they're trying to experiment if that could be where people can come from alternate working days, if service oriented industry can be done from work from home, it will make a massive difference. Because for any organization, a lot of overheads will come down, and that will be a big difference, right? Yes, many work culture companies will be tech oriented. That is something that it is not going to go away. As I was mentioning sometime back, that how technology always looked as a catalyst in aiding the process, but technology will become like the backbone of everything, right? From the education perspective, this is a quite an interesting trend, right? So if we go by the livement data, it says that more than has impacted the education of 300 million students. There are examinations which are supposed to get conducted, which are not happening now. We don't know. There is a lot of speculation about when the schools will start. The entire life cycle of the conventional way of June, July, May, you have these admissions. We have no idea how things are going to happen. So edutech is clearly like one big emerging category. We have seen a fair amount of success with Byju's and lot of Indian companies like Upgrad and everyone who are getting into this whole online course module, right? So, and somewhere we all have understood that it not necessarily you have to be in on campus. Yes, obviously that always makes a big difference, but you can still learn through with the power of your laptop or your gadget, right? So a lot of acceptance of video lectures and learning apps will go up. In fact, um, if you look at the overall pattern, right, there will be a lot more conscious and mature decisions that everyone will take. Um, like my whole hypothesis is the fact that earlier, when you have this make my trip and go Vivo, you always had this little travel insurance that that used to come in as a check-in, that you need to add it by say some 20 rupees or 30 rupees or whatever the amount is. um, in fact, people will start taking a lot of travel insurance because they want to be like safe. So this consciousness of okay, let me safeguard myself, let me be mature. It is not about say some 200 rupees or say 1000 rupees. It is about safeguarding will become extremely important, right? From a larger understanding of the business impact, right? There is a lot of opinion that is happening around that, how it has impacted from all around the world, right? And there's no denial about how the companies are trying their level best to stay afloat. But how do we wade through it, right? So in fact, India as a country, is really affected by the slowdown in China, because a lot of dependency happens in China for many of the countries. That has really impacted it. But see, there are two theories right now. One theory is the fact that India might be the sort of the fastest revival country. Is because see, we have a major young generation, right, who are sort of a part of this country, which means that there will be certain spending and there will be certain newer ways where they'll always sort of look at FMCG and all the categories. What is important for the fact that if we analyze that, India still has a better chance of revival. On the other hand, there is also a different theory for the fact that how it might be difficult because of the large scale population that we have, right? A simple example is the fact that migrant workers might be slightly scared to come back to urban areas because out of all, and it's really, heart wrenching to hear stories where they didn't have food. We all have seen those videos from, where people from Gurgaon and Delhi were sort of going back to, with, by walking, to their hometowns by walking. So I think a lot of theories will come into play, but it's only about waiting it out and watching that, how the economy pans. Personally, I feel I'm very optimistic about the whole thing is the fact that, see, because we are still in the developing country, and a lot of like Foxconn last year established its Apple factories in India. A lot of factories will now start making India as the hub, right? So I think there's a great opportunity there from the industry perspective. Um, yes, we have seen a lot of these impact happening in auto, pharma, chemicals, IT, solar power, electronic. But I think these also categories will start reviving. If I look at a larger lens, right, if in terms of the positive impact that has happened, right, we all know essentials and food categories. There have been instances where um, the retail outlets have gone completely dry, right? So the food, FMCG, healthcare, all these companies will have a great positive impact because obviously that spendings will never be curtailed. As I was mentioning in my previous point, for the fact that how residential, right? If you are in the player of a large scale and a one BHK or a studio based apartment business, that might see a big surge, right? The most negatively impacted, we all know travel is going to hit terribly because people, everyone would want to sort of first safeguard their basics and then look at other recreation and other things, right? So grocery business, while it has become essential, but it had hit terribly because a lot of workers were not available, right? Parks, transit services, workplaces, many things have happened. Largely put, right? See, I think one word that we all are talking about is survival, right? I think, and essentially we have realized for the fact that it is the basics that matter to us today, and not anything else. In fact, a lot of you know CEOs and CMOs are continuously talking about how there is a big worry out there, right? How if we don't sort of in this whole VUCA world, if things are not transitioning faster, there'll always be a little scare, right? And everyone is having their point of view in terms of how we get our facts right, how do we cut down the expenditure. See, till then the companies afloat, you can always figure out if any organization tanks, then it's a big problem. But what I really appreciate and salute in the whole process, in spite of all these consequences that they're going through, brands are also contributing a lot in their limited capacity, right? Beyond creating sort of communication to for the right advocacy, but they're going out donating money. They are sort of pledging to sign up for a lot of and sort of really partner with our government to help revive the economy. So I think that's a big stand that they're taking. I think largely if I break it down, see, the pre-COVID-19 was business as usual, and there are a lot of predictions out there. The COVID-19 era is all about survival, right? Hopefully after May 17, and that's what I'm praying that the lockdown gets lifted completely with that little respite. But the post COVID-19, right? I think brands will have to continuously adapt and evolve. If you had a great long-term brand strategy, you might have to break down the long-term strategy in terms of what is the micro strategy of say a 3-month plan, 6-month plan, a 9-month plan, because this unpredictability has put many organizations from a revenue structure like almost 2-3 years back. So it will take a lot of time for them to revive once again, right? So I think for brands, they have to be extremely agile, and sort of evolve at times, right? And because if if we are sort of very structured in that environment, it might become a big problem. Above all, I think this is something that I'm a big practitioner of. See, everyone has a certain purpose, right? We all have a purpose towards our career goals. Um, People talk about having a purpose in your life, right? And brand purpose has become like sort of an extremely important factor today. So I believe the fact that how brands will have to be a lot more purposeful in the new normal. It's one is to have a great documented strategy and talking about purpose, but now brands will have to practice a lot more purposeful related micro activities in every day, where it is not just about selling, right? It is about how much differences that I'm going to make with my consumer, and consumers are going to respect such brands, right? We in this whole crisis, there are these brands who have made a difference, and I would say, no, yeah, tomorrow if anything happens like this, I know which brand I need to be with. So that's largely what I have, what I've put together. I am open to sort of Q&As. So Raj, over to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, thank you so much for the amazing session that you have given us. And I think this would probably the it was I think considering all the participants, it was joy to listening to your thoughts among all the industries, all the sectors that you mentioned. I think you touched upon all the sectors. So whether it's automobile, which is I think your favorite, traveling is your favorite. You talk about the education as well. So I think you touched upon almost
Yeah,
all the sectors, and the kind of insights that you shared, that was joy to listen to for all the participants.
thank
So
you,
thank
thank
you
you.
so much. Yeah, thank you so much. And now we have some couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
So that is curated by our team. So I hope that would be fruitful for all the participants. I request all the participants, if you have any questions to ask, please ask in the chat window, or you can PM me personally. So our first question for you is, can you just share your experience with FCB, like when you joined? I think our team has researched a lot about you, and they have seen that you started as in a different organization, that you moved up to the ladders very quickly, and now you are working with FCB. So how was your working experience till now reaching to FCB?
So, see, like how we have this pre-COVID era and post-COVID era. I think, for me, I would want to say that, that's a transition that I had. For a really long time, I mean, I've been in the business for good 9 years now, right? I think what happened was, I always knew that, somewhere digital might, in no less time, might accelerate, right? So I pivoted from my, what I was taught in my academic way. Um, so till the time before I joined FCB, I was having a lot of this multi-dimensional, understanding of brands, categories, and yes, in my career, I've also sort of built certain brands. But with FCB, it sort of just accelerated, right? Because it comes with a lot more process-driven, culture-driven sound understanding of brand and consumers. And I had this ability to contribute these all inside thinking and using my digital expertise to build that. So I think that is where a major difference happened.
Okay, that's great. So I think that was great learning experience for you as well, working with the different organization. My second question is, uh, with the COVID-19 lockdown, what do you see how brand gonna change their marketing strategy?
So see, at this point of time, I think they're not going to go all out. Okay, that is one thing for sure. Um, there will be a certain level of cost consciousness, or what are the important spends that are valid, right? Earlier, media promotion used to be extremely important. So every penny that is spent in media will be analyzed lot more holistically. In fact, Publici Group, which is also one of the big giants, just launched an initiative called the Pact, right? So it's more like how there's a product selling that agar, if it doesn't work, the paise wapis. So, and I think the pact somehow has the whole arrangement of the fact that how we'll ensure the fact that we'll deliver in what KPIs that we commit to. So I made to sort of go through a lot of the information about it, the nitty-gritties. But if you look at it, marketeers are going to analyze every goddamn penny. So, which also puts a lot of pressure on agencies, is because people will have to think of a lot more pragmatic ideas, and not just ideas that are doable, executionable, and when I interact with my clients, there's this always this term that is just fast, cheap, and viral hona chahiye. So I think those things will come into play a lot. But yeah, I think agencies will be a lot more pragmatic because we all understand these things. But yeah, marketeers' spendings are going to be analyzed in a very cutthroat.
Yeah, great. Obviously, because they would be reducing their spend, they'll be micro analyzing all the money spent on the advertisement, whether it's a traditional or digital. On the same line, I have my other question. Since you mentioned about the idea stuff, so I want to ask you, if someone want to launch their new business on the digital platform or advertisement, what are the new business opportunity that's gonna emerge post COVID-19?
Sure. So, so I'll tell you why, coming back to what you said some time back, there's a reason why I tried to cover a lot of these behaviors across categories, right? And the reason largely being for the fact that, see, brands will somewhere also pivot, right? Because there are many categories that might die or probably will have some stagnancy, right? So if you look at emerging opportunities, I clearly see healthcare, educational, and organic farming, and a lot of agrarian-based, agro-tech related stuff. I think those will be a great emerging. I mean, those will be the great emerging industries, right? Because suddenly there is going to be a huge demand that will be created, and the principle of economy is very simple, right? It's the demand and supply. It's the balance between both of them.
Exactly.
So I think those are the clearly emerging sectors. Um, the other thing that I see, I think there will be a great revolution in fintech, right? Because I remember Samsung had these tap to pay, so they integrated the whole RFID in their phones, right? So the whole tap to pay, or paying via UPI, will be lot more important, right? So probably either existing brands might just evolve. You will never know, sort of, the app that you have been using will also have UPI. So the UPI or a contactless payment will be a great emerging fintech solution.
Great. Yeah, I think to add up to the same thing, since you mentioned about the fintech, I think WhatsApp is, I think there was some news just few days back that I read about WhatsApp that they are planning to enter into the lending business.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's true or not. So I think, as you mentioned, fintech gonna be a big revolution post COVID-19. Yeah, so in this entire scenario, since you mentioned about agri-tech, you mentioned about the fintech, you mentioned about the digital industry as well. I want to ask you, what would be the future of the digital professional? Like, would that gonna increase? Since you mentioned there are so many salary cuts which are happening across the industries. What would be the role of the digital professional, and how people should, learn the new skills into the COVID-19 to survive the entire health? What's your take?
So, I've been asked these questions in my earlier interviews also. And see, I think, what happens, right? After a point, we start getting intimidated in life, right? Because in the learning part of it, we feel, yeah, ये digital is very technology, or I can't understand. I think that's a very, we need to, so there is this concept called reframing, right? In advertising, we talk about reframing a lot. You just need to reframe your orientation. The fact is that, like how for a really long time in your early 2000s, having an MBA became extremely important, right? Agar
Exactly.
MBA nahi to naukri nahi, that is what the reality came into play. I think it has become extremely important for all of us to understand the fundamentals of digital. And honestly, I feel for the fact that there is no rocket science there. It is, I mean, it's very practical. You sit down, you take some courses, be something like, what you are doing, right? Where you're enlightening people with digital Gurukul. Um, it's all about, and it's the new MBA, yeah. It's the new MBA for the new normal, if I have to put it that way.
Exactly, exactly. It's a new MBA for the I mean, the
The-
people who are looking for a digital skills. Since
Yeah.
you mentioned about digital skills, I want to ask you, since you mastered this advertisement and digital skills a long way back, uh, since you're working in the agency since a long period of time, any other memorable campaigns that you like to share? I mean, a few memorable campaigns that you run for any popular brands that you like to share with the participants?
See, there's this one campaign that I personally liked, which is not an FCB, but if you have seen the Swiggy commercials last year, right, where you had a very simple gulab jamun, who is staring, he just suddenly comes this Swiggy delivery boy who comes in front of you, and then you just quickly eat it and says no minimum order. I think it's so simple, right? I think I am personally a big fan of that commercial for that piece of work. I think Swiggy is sort of doing a lot of interesting work there. Recently at FCB, we did something very interesting for an initiative by Times of India and Bombay Times. Okay, so we all know how sleep deprived we are, and with this lockdown, everybody is sort of clocking their sleep deprivation with, I'm assuming with some good 8-9 hours of normal sleep. But the stat says that India is the second most sleep deprived country in the world. Okay, and that is massive here. It's really massive, and we all know the disorders that you will have if you haven't had an adequate sleep. I think somewhere that was a culture that was created. यार मैं सिर्फ वो 4 घंटे सोया हूँ. It shows that how hardworking you are. But the reality is that is not the sense of achievement. So we did something for this initiative. So we sort of we did a lot of deep data mining, and we looked at analytics and everything. So we realized that why is the sleep not happening? Is because you're just running from one pole to the other, that finally in the last 3 hours of the day, that is when you're spending time with your smartphone on your social media, right? That is the time you also see a lot of people sharing content, and those content and there's a good balance of 50-60% of people sharing memes, right? Because memes are your expression, right? So if you are a very, so if you look at certain, and I would request if you could observe certain patterns in your Instagram friends. So people who are very intelligent, right, they'll always share content about economists, Forbes, environment. And there are also these other lovely friends that we have who will share some class and interesting funny content, right? So memes are a part of their expression, right? And we realized if we could sort of use the same memes and flip that into a lot more advisory content with having that same simple narrative, we will be able to achieve the campaign success. So we didn't do advertising. We only did memevertising. You wouldn't believe in one third of the media budget, and the campaign was supposed to be sort of like to achieve the 1 million engagements in 3 months or 4 months. We did it in straight 1 month, right? So it is all about understanding where the audience is, what the behavior is, what is the most relevant touch point. And what we did was we also tweaked our campaign time and again, right? So we started with memes. It actually became like a big hit. After that, we created an entire custom algorithm on the web. So what we did was we created a custom algorithm of sleep deprivation. So the meme sort of took it to a website called takebacksleep.org, where we put some logic and sort of create an algorithm where it could predict how sleep deprived you are, and based on that, how what are the steps that you got to take immediately. So if you are in a very bad state, you got to, and the answers were not oh, you need to sleep for 8 hours. We said that shut the laptop down and go to sleep right away, you can exit the website later. So I think we made it a lot more conversational. So I think I've had a great time, because this was a very difficult challenge, and suddenly we made a big difference in the campaign.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. So I think this it's very interesting campaign. My next question is, since our team was going through and researching about you, and team found out that your second love beyond the advertisement is, I think, automobile and
Yeah,
traveling.
yeah.
So is it correct?
Yeah, totally. I think if my father keeps joking about that, and if not advertising, I think you would have been a driver. So, so I think because yeah, I think I've always so I feel that that's a great break that I get is because see, we all feel for the fact that how being an advertising industry is great. It's fun. It's a creative industry. It has a lot of liberty. I have a very different point of view. I think
So
it
if
is one of
I,
the
let's say if I ask you the same thing since you mentioned about automobile, which advertisement campaign about any leading automobile brand that you would like to share that you like, you loved it.
so I have so I will not be digital here. I'll slightly be analog. So I have loved BMW, the global work, right? In fact, I think automobile industry also has a lot of interesting commercial point of view, right? When they create content. There's a very interesting BMW X6 ad which is done way back. So it had a 4x4 technique, right? So that it had a very simple messaging or the headline in the advertising parlance, if I say, it said "Drive it like you hate it," right? Because when you go off-roading, you're just like going all berserk, right? It's just like balancing it out, and so it's all about driving it like you hate it. So I think I really love that part. So if you look at in India right now, I think what MG did right is brilliant, right, with the whole voice capability, and they sold entire cars with only voice as a functionality, right? The kind of content that they are creating. So I think that's quite interesting. Um, but I'm actually a lot more fan of the global advertising landscape of say Volkswagen or Mercedes or BMW because I feel they do a lot of this playful, interesting work. Beyond selling car, and that is when people would want to buy that car.
Great, great, great. So I think that's a great insight that you shared. Now we'll take up the participants' questions. So some of the questions that you've taken.
Yeah.
Now, since we are going live not only on Zoom but on YouTube as well. So some people are watching on YouTube, some are there as well. So we have created the questions. So
Yeah.
some we have already asked you. Some of the questions which are here. So Vaidehi Khandelwal, she's asking, do you think digital marketing will going to increase highly post COVID-19 and in what ways?
Okay. So see, I'll tell you the beauty of digital marketing is the fact that you can analyze data in a lot more better way, right? If you look at brands, yes, they might not spend heavily, but if they want to track that every penny that is going through, digital becomes like the most obvious medium, right? I may not. So my prediction right at this point of time is that as much as the surge that you see, the 400% growth and everything, which big brands can sort of possibly spend that money. But I clearly see that digital in the marketing spends right will play a very important role. So it might not surge heavily, but suddenly if you're spending 20%, you will see a additional 20% rise that is happening. Hello, Raj, I can't hear you.
Yeah, Vinesh, can you hear me?
Yeah, much. I think I just lost you for a few seconds.
Yeah. Now we have the second question, which has been asked by Pushpak. Now his question
Yeah.
is, sir, I want to launch the e-commerce store and enter into the medtech industry. So I want to, enter into the selling mask and gloves. So should I start launching my own e-commerce store, or should I just upload the same thing, rely on the Amazon, Paytm, and other e-commerce sites? And is it the right move?
I think, if, Pushpak, if you're thinking about it, I think you should do it right away. Like the deadline should be yesterday and not tomorrow. I think you can start slow. See, because right now, if you look at the landscape, e-com also has a limited restriction, right? They're only delivering essentials. They might start delivering non-essentials slowly. But I think the best way to first be is that, you partner with other e-com giants like Flipkart and Amazon, because obviously there is a great sizable audience there, right? um, if you're doing your own e-com, I'm not taking that away, please do it, but you'll have to spend a lot more on your getting your e-com right through SEO, SEM, be a lot more discoverable and people are looking at it. So it makes sense for you to sort of list your products in Amazon or in Flipkart, because over there probably at the initial phase you might see that the demand is there. Once you sort of the business stabilizes, you can do your own e-com. See, because generally people don't prefer to buy, one specific product in an e-com environment, right? So Amazon, Flipkart obviously offers you that pool, so it becomes a lot more easier for you to, test that environment and see how things are shaping up.
Okay, okay. So that's a great advice. I hope Pushpak you will implement the same. So I think this were the question for Vinesh, and I think most of the questions you already answered that with the presentation, and I think FAQs cleared everything for all the participants. So I think thank you so much, the Vinesh, for I mean it was pleasure having you for our masterclass series, and the kind of the insights that you have curated across all the sectors, the kind of efforts that you made up, and the kind of intensity that you've shown in answering the questions, that was, I mean, completely remarkable. So, from the entire digital Gurukul family, we thanks a lot for accepting our invitation, coming to our masterclass series, and enlightening the future digital professionals.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Raj.
any, yeah,
I
yeah.
think the credit goes to you here. For and your team who have spotted me on LinkedIn and reached out to me. I think and the wonderful initiative that you have taken during this entire lockdown, and trying to do your bit by helping enlightening people and understanding the importance of learning digital. It is not about just having a course or a skill. It is where it will become very important factor in your everyday basis, right? So I think that's a great initiative that you have taken. So and I had a great time putting this. I hope whatever I could sort of put in together is helpful for many people out there. And yeah, I would love to sort of talk to you once again and share my knowledge.
Thank you so much. It was really indeed very helpful for all the participants, and will surely keep the future engagement, and will surely be in touch once this COVID is over. There are multiple engagement opportunities, so we'll surely be in touch with you, and will not let you go so easily.
Happy to hear that. All right,
Thank you
thank you.
so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone. So we'll end up
Thank you,
together.
everyone.